This episode has been brought to you by Hello Wellness.
If you're not feeling like you think you should, if you're on multiple medications and you just don't have the stamina you used to, well, then say hello to wellness. With a few changes in your diet and routine, you will feel like a brand new man. Run, play with your kids, and keep a smile on your partner's face. It's as simple as saying hello. Find out more information by going to www.hellowellness.live. That's www.hellowellness.live.
Core Confidence Life.
Oh, right there. Welcome to the Core Confidence Life Personal Development Podcast. I am your host, Dennis, broadcasting to you right here in New York City. All right, now you really do want to follow us on social media and Core Confidence TV because as I've been mentioning over on our YouTube page, Core Confidence TV there, you will get to see some podcasts that are on video and some other things. So go there. Also follow us on Facebook, Core Confidence Life, over on Twitter, Core Confidence Life. You know the deal. And if you want to hear back shows and get right to Core Confidence TV and some of the videos, you can also go to cclpodcast.com. That's cclpodcast.com. Also, listen to us on all of the podcatchers that exist, like Apple and Google and Spotify and all those things. Welcome to the show. Take a seat because we're talking about some serious issues on this motherfucker, right? By the way, we are uncensored. So, on today's program, we are talking about domestic violence against men. Now, domestic violence against men is so underreported, and it's still considered laughable by some people. The idea that a man can be abused by a woman, what? Well, it's true, and it's underreported, and it's underserved. Do you know that according to statistics that we have on the main page of this episode site, 28% of men report some form of domestic violence in the United States. And I just saw something, the article's a little older, but it showed that 40% of men report domestic violence in the UK. So we all know that women suffer domestic violence. It's a very high number. But what's underreported, of course, is male domestic violence, right? On today's program, we are interviewing a guest that we've had here before. Demetrios Angelis is here to speak to us about domestic violence against men. This is the second part of his interview. He was on here a few months ago talking about his wrongful conviction of murder of his wife, when in actuality she was the abuser in the relationship. And so we spent the first part of the interview talking about all the details of the wife's affair, the way she manipulated the children, her attempts to remove his penis because she had an obsession with Lorena Bobbitt, for those of you who know who Lorena Bobbitt is, and the details of his trial and him getting it overturned. And so he's on the program today to talk to us about how he made it through those ordeals. We've already looked at the details of the situation. Now we're going to turn to how a man deals with the enormous mental trauma of being abused. How was his reaction to the abuse? How did he land into a relationship in the first place? What trauma did he suffer by his wife trying to remove his penis? And how did he cope being in jail? And now he's out, starting his life over. So all those details coming at you. So if you can identify with being an abused man in a relationship, you might want to listen to this to get some helpful tips on how to move past this. After these messages. Having specific concrete skills to get a job done is great. Having the soft skills that you can take to any job is even better. And speaking and communication is at the top of that list. Move ahead quickly in your company and become a great entrepreneur just by opening your mouth. Core Confidence Life wants to help you reach that pinnacle. We are a talent development, promotion, and coaching service that will have you speaking confidently with power and persuasion. Whether it's running a meeting or winning clients, we'll take you from a quiet whisperer to a competent communicator. Just contact us, coreconfidencelife.com. That's www.coreconfidencelife.com. How you doing, Demetrios?
Hey, I'm good, Dennis. Glad to be back.
You are back and better than ever.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So the first show, people can hear that first show. If they're listening to us from the main page, they can just kind of click the link in the description that leads back to the first show. But I want to just give people a brief overview of what happened on the first show and familiarize people with your story a little bit. So maybe in a paragraph, you can give people a recap of what went on with you as far as the the abusive relationship and all the stuff that we mentioned last time.
Okay. So basically, I was married for 16 years, and I was in the relationship for 18. After 8 years of marriage, we had our first child, and then 4 years after that, a second one. So a daughter, then a son. And the relationship was very unhealthy. She had a temper, and she had to be very much in control of her environment. And that came through very clearly in our marriage. And over the years, it just escalated to a point of being very abusive. And so after, I guess, 16 years of marriage, she was carrying an affair. And I sort of, over time realized that she was having an affair, but I didn't do anything at the time. Couple of reasons. One, fear of how was I going to get out of the marriage, without any retaliation, violent retaliation from her, but also for the sake of the kids. How do I get out of it? Am I maintaining a stable home environment for the kids, but at the same time being safe and being ready to leave? And so after 16 years of marriage, she just showed up with her lover and to try and kidnap our younger son, who was 3 at the time, with his passport. I called the police right away, got them involved. They didn't want to get involved. They said go to court. For the divorce, I did. We first sort of tried to mediate things with my priest, and she didn't want to hear any of that. So we started the divorce process. And once I filed for divorce, things got really ugly real fast. She got very violent with me, and to the point where she actually beat me up. She kicked my ass on a Sunday morning in front of the kids. And very violent, to the point where I was bleeding all over the apartment, and the blood was coming from my penis, where she tried to sort of cut it off with her fingernails. And she, in the back of her mind, she had always admired Lorena Bobbitt, so I'm guessing that's where that came from. And she really wanted to, she was losing control of the situation in the divorce, and she wanted to set her foot down and still wear the pants, and make the decisions. And she was losing control because of the divorce, and that's how things happened on that day that she died. She died of a rare heart condition, but everybody thought that I murdered her because she was having the affair and we were divorcing. And a lot of the, evidence and the facts and the circumstances was sort of overlooked for one reason or another, whether it was because of, racism, because I am a man of color, but also or because of the situation with men and women where, people don't want to accept the fact that men can be abused or beaten up by their wives. And so I was wrongfully convicted by a jury of 8 women and 4 men and sent to life in prison for murder. And it took me about 3 years after that to get the conviction overturned and get retried and ultimately acquitted. So I did spend quite a bit of jail time, basically for nothing, with some very serious criminals. And so I had to get back on my feet I lost everything. I lost the custody of my kids. I lost my job with the government, with the public health department. I lost my years of freedom, almost 6 years of my freedom. and I'm now rebuilding my life, doing talking on people's podcasts. I'm writing a book that's coming out. I've been asked to write a second book after this one is done, and doing money on the side through flipping houses and renovating homes and doing rental property business. So this is where I am now in my life. And also, there's a movie coming out based on on the book. So Hollywood really, really wants to pursue this story because it's based on reality, and it's also on a topic that's not really talked about, and that's domestic violence on men, and how men go through losing their kids and trying to cope through all this process and get back on their feet. Basically, that's what it is in a nutshell.
And there you go. There's a lot of details there. So people want to hear the extended version of those details. You can certainly go back to the show that we did, and you can do a search for Demetrios Angelis on the website, and you'll come across that, or wrongly convicted of murder, or whatever keywords. It'll come right up on the website. But on this show, on this episode with you here again, I wanted to focus more on the psychological ways that you've coped with all these issues, because the first time we covered the details, and now I want to cover the psychological and spiritual ways that you have moved through those things. I think it's very important for other men out there who may have gone through the same kinds of things to hear spoken about by another man, in an honest, open way. So I guess we start at the being abused itself, like going through the process mentally, not the actual details, but just mentally having someone abuse you like this for long periods of time, seeing your marriage go down the toilet slowly, having people not really take you seriously when you've tried to report it, all these things. Like, how was that for you psychologically? What were you going through?
Well, the way I like to describe it is this way, right? Everybody has more than one role in life. We all wear different hats. Some people, they go, whatever, 9 to 5 or whatever to go do their job. They come home, then that's where they become like sort of the husband or whatever, wife. And then you become the parent. There are times when you go to parent, whether you're at parent-teacher meetings in school at your kids, or whether at your home on the weekend looking after the kids. And so we have different roles. And what I found myself doing is I seemed to have a normal life when I was at the office, but then when I was with the kids alone, again, a different role, a healthy relationship with the kids. But then when I'm with the wife, I find myself walking on eggshells because I'm afraid to get her upset and have some kind of retaliation, whether it's verbally or threats or physical or whatever. And so that's how I coped. And a lot of people do it as well. I mean, they call it, compartments. You have compartments in your mind or in your spirit, and you sort of say, okay, I'm in a different room now in my mind. I have to act differently and be one way as opposed to being the other way. So it was almost like I had different personality, where I was one way in one environment, but another in a different one. And so when I was with the wife, I wasn't really being myself because I was always on a fight or flight response mechanism. And that's a term that you find often with people that are surviving. Survivors are always fighting or running away. And so in the marriage part of my life, I was always surviving. But in the other parts of my life, as a father or as a guy at the office of the public health department, I was normal. I was able to be myself. So basically, that's how I coped for 16 years.
Yeah. So when you had to do those compartmentalizations, I don't know, how did you feel about having to live that way? Like, because I know that sometimes people get used to it, and so it becomes a way of life. So maybe they don't think about it, but I think they do. So being that you had to compartmentalize yourself, was there anything you did to, move through that process, or what were you thinking during all that?
Well, you learn right away. You learn right away that this is how you have to do it. This is how you have to behave. It's like when a guy in a normal circumstance, he'll act a different way with his buddies when they're drinking, and then when he's at home with the woman, he acts another different way. And so you have to learn that. You have to learn these responses and everything. It's unfortunate. It's not really healthy because, especially when you're always in fight or flight mode at home with the wife, it takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on you mentally and spiritually, and then you have to find time for yourself to sort of clear that mindset. So you could go meditate, or you can go to a park or a beach or whatever, and that's what you did. And personally, for me, I enjoyed that. I would go take the kids away from their mother, and I think, yeah, I'm spending time with the kids, but at the same time, I'm getting connected with the nature in the park or at the beach, and then sort of de-stress and get that adrenaline that's in your body, because you're always scared, always ready to run away or fight because of all those times that you're in that abusive situation. So I always turn to nature. I always have to. And to be honest, I was telling my friend this yesterday. If I don't go, and at least twice a year, to a natural environment, to sort of meditate, I can't. I feel it in my bones and my spirit that I can't continue being one way at home, but then being another way, along with the kids or at work.
So, how are you feeling when you finally just said, this is enough? I'm tired of dealing with this situation. I know things don't happen like light switches. You just it's enough and you switch it off. I know it's a process.
Yeah.
But when you had finally had enough of all of that, can you take us through what was in your mind when you finally got fed up, and what happened?
It wasn't really fed up, but I think the line was crossed. The line was crossed when she was now being a danger or aggressive or harmful to the kids. And that's when I decided, you know what, I didn't really care what she did to me over the years, but when she started being hurtful and harmful to the kids, I just drew a line on the sand, and I said, this has to stop one way or the other. I brought her to my priest, and he said, he gave her an ultimatum. He said, you either change, and stop this behavior, or you go straight to the court for the divorce, and she didn't like that, idea of having an ultimatum given to her, because she's the one usually giving ultimatums in life, and so that's when things got ugly, and that's when I found myself being more assertive in life. I said, this is not about me, it's about my kids, and that's it. And it's not really a question of being fed up. It's more like, okay, you crossed the line, and now you're starting to be harmful, to the kids, and they're innocent and all. But I don't care about your affair, what you're doing to me and how you treat me. But once you start doing things to the kids, I have to draw the line and say, enough is enough. I'm standing up to you for the first time in our marriage for 16 years and saying this has to end. So she's not expecting that. She always thought that I was a yes man, I was a pussy, I would never stand up to her, and I would just let her do what she wanted to do for the past 16 years of our marriage.
So, but here's a question I have. Why didn't you care what she did to you? Did you, you said that she felt that you was a yes man, a pussy, or whatever.
Yeah.
Why didn't you care what she did to you? Why didn't you advocate for yourself? Is it that do you have a more passive personality? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, I'm more of a passive and quiet guy, but I'm always someone who believes in peace, keeping the peace in the family. I've always done that since childhood, trying to keep the peace, because my father, he was an alcoholic, and he would get violent with me and my brother, and then sometimes my mother. And I always tried to find a way to keep the peace since I was, I think, 9 years old. And so if I found a way for my father not to take out his anger out on us, to keep the peace at home, then we had sort of a normal, peaceful environment. And so I've always had this I guess upbringing of trying to keep the peace at home at all costs, to the point where I'm willing to take whatever abuse if it means everybody else in the family can live peacefully and happily at home.
Well, how do you feel about that? Like, have you changed since then? Your, I guess, peacekeeping efforts. Have you changed since then? What do you feel about your personality at this point?
I've changed quite a bit. The whole experience of going to jail for a crime you didn't commit, and being with certain people, and and hearing you hear advice. You hear advice from all the convicts. And they kept saying, and it's funny because they kept telling me the same thing over and over and over again, and they never met each other. I would move from one jail to the other, and they would all tell me the same thing. He says, they all call me Angelis or Angelo. Your kindness is your weakness. Every time you're doing something out of kindness or compassion or generosity, you're making yourself weak. And when you make yourself weak, other people come and and they see you as a target, or they become predators, and then they start preying on you. And so I've changed, and I've had a few family members tell me the same thing. Jim or Jimmy, that's what my family mostly calls me. They says, look, you're too nice. You're too nice a guy, and that's why you're in the situation that you're in now. Whereas if you started sticking up for yourself and not and start valuing yourself more, as an individual, then you wouldn't be in the situation where people walk all over you. So I've changed, and people have changed, and and I was dating someone briefly after I got exonerated and everything, and I found myself in the same kind of situation where she was walking all over me, and I finally put my foot down and ended the relationship behind it. So I have changed. I don't allow people to sort of do what they want with me just to keep the peace.
So how did you make that change? Was there something that you just did it, or was there a process you had to go through to kind of toughen up a little bit? How was that?
Well, I look back and I sort of ask myself, why? Why did I find myself in this situation? Why do I? And then when you hear people tell you the same thing, you go deeper into retrospective thoughts and thinking. And writing my autobiography helped me as well, because it sort of forced me to go back in time and realize why I am the way I was, or why and why and sort of realize what my mistakes were. I took the wrong path in life, or the wrong path in thinking, and if I had done it differently, I would find myself in a much different and better situation as I did. So the autobiography, the reflective thinking, the constant comments by people, whether it was family members or convicts, sort of forced me to change and to realize I can't continue to be the way that I am.
Was it hard at first? Like when you first started being more assertive, when you first started putting yourself first, was that hard for you? How did you feel when you were doing that?
It was difficult because I'd never been used to it. In my 45 years of life, I've never been used to that. I've never been accustomed to that. I was never encouraged to be that way by my parents. They liked me being the good, obedient son, never causing them any problems, never being rebellious during my adolescent years. And so you're not used to it. And now here you are at 45 saying, you know what, maybe I should be a bit rebellious. Not to the point where you're going out, vandalizing or anything, but to the point where you're going to say no, even if it means it's going to lead to arguments or breakups.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you stood up to this this woman you were dating right after, and you said, "We're not gonna take it," was hard for you? What was her response to it, if she had one? What was that like?
She didn't like it one bit. She was used to, based on what she read in the media about me and what she heard from other people about me, that I was a yes man and a pussy and willing to do everything she wanted. That was the kind of guy she was looking for anyway. So for me now to start putting my foot down and saying no, she went into a tantrum and then started saying all kinds of things which weren't really true, but and to the point where she took it very hard, because all of a sudden she thought she was getting one kind of a guy, to be her main squeeze, her main man in her life, but ending up being somebody else completely different. So I liked it. It took me, to be honest, it took me a while to sort of bring that up from inside, saying I'm not going through this type of relationship again where I'm being walked all over by my woman, and I'm going to put my foot down, and if she doesn't want to accept it, then fine, we'll end it, and I'll continue on my life and, being assertive and getting what I want in the relationship.
All right. And so it feels good now to put yourself first, right?
It does. And now, I'm sort of, dating, a couple of other women, and they're telling me after reading my, advanced copies of my book that, you have to put yourself first, otherwise if you don't put yourself first, who will? Right? So, it's true. I mean, you can always be that nice guy, giving guy, but you always have to have time for yourself and look at your own best interest in life, right?
Yeah. Well, I say you can be nice, just don't be naive. Like I'm a nice guy. I'm a really nice guy. I'm not to toot my own horn, but I'm generous. I'm nice. I'm
Yeah.
all these things. But yeah, don't test me. you
Yeah.
know. So you can do both. You can be a nice, loving, soft, open, loving guy, but also keep that one eye open to see who's actually trying to take advantage and who's being genuine.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad that you made that change and you came out of this stronger and more assertive. That's important.
It took a long time to get there, and I lost a lot in the process. But I think at the end of the day, I'm a better man for it.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that you mentioned, and I know this is a thing, and I want to hear how you've gone through it. Now, you talked about your wife injuring your penis, and
Yeah.
I guess she was obsessed with Lorena Bobbitt, so I guess she was trying to injure your penis on purpose,
Yeah.
or make it not work, or whatever she was trying to do. So, what was that like for you? One, like, what was the response from the doctors who had to look at your penis and treat it? How did you feel about it? And what was that like?
Well, after my injury, I was immediately arrested and sent to the jail. And then the prison doctor only saw me, I think, about a week later, and nobody really cared. I mean, the paramedic saw it, and he pretty much sort of gave up on me and says, well, there's nothing we can do about your injury. And the police officer just took me straight to the police, the police station to book me and everything. And I was thrown in the detention center and kept there until my bail. And it was kept there for 8 months. But anyway, the doctor just, it was the response was people didn't care. They saw the injury or they heard about it, they read about it, and just didn't care. They figured, I was a piece of shit for killing my wife in front of the kids, and I'm not going to need my penis anymore. And when the doctor finally saw it, he just gave me a jar of Vaseline and then said, here you go. And that was it. He didn't really care if it was working, if it was healing or anything. When the prison guards admitted me to the jail, they sort of asked me about all my injuries because they wanted to make sure that their asses were covered. They wanted to make sure that they weren't accused of any brutality because they saw the injuries on my face, you know what I mean, and on the rest of my body. And when I told them about my penis, they said, well, that's not our concern, and that's a medical problem. That's a medical issue. Well, then when they sent in the freaking medic, he didn't know anything about it except give me a jar of Vaseline. So here I am. I put the Vaseline on to try and somehow heal the scar and everything. But in 8 months in jail, you were curious. Does it still work? Does it still work? And in 8 months in jail, even though you're locked up with 2 other guys in the jail cell, you still find times to sort of test and see if everything's working okay. And it did. I mean, and it worked. And I was happy about that. I mean, it didn't look at, and then the injury was thankfully healing a bit better. But I mean, there's a bit of a discoloration around the tip. But other than that, it still works, and I had no complaints whatsoever from the following relationship. And so, but still, it's very traumatic because physically it's still working, and you have the reminder that you try to cut it off, but psychologically you're thinking this woman really wanted to demasculate you, and so the effect more was the psychological shock of here she is, she's been your wife for 16 years, you've been together for 18, and because now you're standing up to her, she's going to demasculate you or emasculate you by ripping off your manhood, or at least injuring it or whatever. And so that the effect for me was more mental than more, physiological. Physiologically, it was still working, and now you're scared because now you're wondering, is every woman going to be like that? Every time you stand up to a woman, is she going to, try and take away your manhood because you're standing up to her? And so that's where you start getting mentally, messed up in the head, So again, with this past woman that I broke up with, I was smart enough to do it over the phone. I did it sneakily. Like I got all my personal belongings out of her house, and just, left and then broke up with her over the phone to make sure there was no opportunity for her to do the same thing and try and, take away my manhood. So you're scared. You're always scared. You always have to think ahead of time. You've been through this part where you have a constant reminder of the scar and a scar on your penis that you better be careful, how you are with your next woman, your next relationship. So that fear is always there in the back of my head.
Yeah. So when this first happened, like, no one gave you a Band-Aid? Like, how was it injured? Like, what did she do to it?
Okay, her nails. She had sunk her nails in. I mean, I remember she always had mentioned in the past, you know, if you don't do this, if you don't follow my way, I'm going to go and get the pair of scissors or a pair of knife, you know, from the kitchen, and I'm just going to, you know, cut it off, you know, and she was even bragging about it in front of her sisters. And so in the back of my mind, you know, I'm thinking, okay, you know, she's reached that point in our relationship. And so when we had the fight, I did everything I could to stop her from going to the kitchen, because in the back of my mind, I go, okay, she's going to go to the kitchen like she always says and get this knife or get the scissors and cut it off. But she was so determined to sort of take away my manhood. She used her fingernails. She had these long fingernails, and she just used that to try and sort of cut the tip off or injure the tip of it. I was wearing boxer shorts at the time because I was getting dressed, getting ready to go to church. And she just, you know, got her nails in there to try and pull it off or cut it off or whatever. And so she got me with her nails, and she wouldn't let go, and I had to, you know, literally push her off. So it left a scar, you know, and I'm, you know, and it was, again, my blood all over the apartment. It wasn't her blood, you know, it was all coming from the penis. Right. And so when the paramedics saw that, you know, before I got arrested, and then after that, the jail doctor saw it, they didn't seem to care. And I started seeing, okay, they don't care. There's a bigger issue here than my penis. And so a bigger social issue. And then the social issue is the sort of the men-women dynamics, but also, you know, with the Me Too movement and domestic violence, you know, the one-sided view of domestic violence, but also sort of the racial issue, because, you know, you got a bit of tint in your skin color, and then they don't treat you as serious as if you didn't have any, you know. Yeah. So it's deep. It's very deep for me, all that.
So they didn't treat it. There was no Band-Aid. There was no care for it. It just basically had to heal on its own.
Yeah, with a jar of
Vaseline. What the hell was the Vaseline going to do? You had your shit ripped off. What the Vaseline's going to do?
If you're gay and it's still working, then maybe that's what the Vaseline means.
Well, you're in jail now. You're not in a whorehouse. You're in a hospital. Like,
I was never sent to the hospital. So they had the paramedic look at me, and then they sent me to the jail hospital for briefly. Yeah. You know, and sent me back to my cell with a jar of Vaseline. So
yeah.
maybe
That's
was the doctor trying to tell me something?
I guess they had to give you something so they can say they gave you something.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous. So obviously the injury was healing on its own. So did you have, was any erections you had painful? Like, how was that? Because it's healing. So how did the recovery go? I'm guessing you're not using it right away, obviously. So
no, I mean,
was it a painful recovery? Was erections painful?
I did try it, you know, and 8 months in jail, you know, you're going to try and find a way to use it, either see if it works or whether.
Well, sure, you found a way to beat off or something.
Yeah, so, that's right.
Yeah,
so it didn't hurt. Thankfully, it didn't hurt, and so.
So you masturbated, you didn't hurt. You had an erection, obviously. You had an orgasm. It didn't hurt.
No. Okay. So it wasn't that serious, and that's why I think they said it was all superficial, and it was mostly the outer skin. But you know, the scar or the discoloration is still there when you see, and I see it when I go, you know.
Yeah, when you take it out, you see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it sort of triggers, you know, the events of the day that it happened. So sort of like post-traumatic stress.
So when you've been with women since that, obviously they see your penis too. I mean, but I'm guessing based on what you said earlier, that people who date you already know this story.
They do.
Okay.
They do, and you know, they ask. They ask. I mean, it's funny. Even I remember when I was out on bail, my neighbor had asked me. She was a woman. She asked me if it was still working and everything. I said, "Oh yeah, everything still works." You know, so people are curious. They want to know if it works. You know, if it affects my performance in bed, and it doesn't. And so I've already proven that and shown that to whatever people I've been with, and they're happy about it, and they don't mind. You know what? A lot of women are very understanding. If they know that you've been in an abusive relationship, they're very understanding, and they say, you know, at the end of the day, they don't really care what it looks like as long as it does the job.
Yeah.
And so I have had no complaints so far about my performance, and so that's the most important thing, I guess, in a relationship, right?
Well, yeah, but okay, so physically or psychologically, did you feel less than a man because of your injury? How did you cope with it psychologically? Did you take a hit to your psychological manhood? What was that like inside your head?
It does, because now you're different from other guys. In your head you're different because you've got this, constant reminder what you've been through, and it doesn't go away, it doesn't heal, and it's very hard to sort of take away any scar or any discoloration of the skin on their penis. And it's risky. Even if you try and do it, it's very risky. I don't know how some guys have the guts to go with penile, enlargement, because that's very risky. It's very harmful. You could do more damage than good. And I know because of my nursing background and public health background. So I figured I'm not going to take that risk and just be upfront and honest with the woman of what it looks like, because they know, for the most part, they know the story, but they don't know what it looks like. Except for that one time, the photos were shown in court during my trial. But other than that, people don't really know what it looks like. And I have to give them a heads up, and then they're okay with it. The fact that they're very understanding, and the women that I've sort of talked to about it are very warm and open-minded, it's fine. I have yet to meet a woman who was sort of turned off by it or said that they're not, they lose interest, and that's it. And for the most part, women are curious. They want to see it. They say, okay, take it out. I want to see it. And that's funny. It is.
Well, but I understand that. I totally understand why people would be, he was injured. Like, what does that look like? Just like, just people with penis piercings. Oh, I want to see that. Like, people are curious about penis. Yeah, especially exactly. if there's something unusual going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. It's good to know, just from a man's perspective. Good to know that everything is working and nothing was really done to it other than superficial scars.
That's right.
That's good. So then after that, you are in jail. Of course, wrongly convicted, but in jail nevertheless. Yeah. So, like, what is that like? You was in jail for how long?
Yeah, so it took me 8 months to get out on bail because it was hard to find a judge who was going to grant me bail. And then after I got on bail, I was okay for about, I had to wait on, I think, I got out about another 18 months to go to trial. And then obviously I got wrongfully convicted and went straight to jail again. And that took me about 3, almost 4 years to get back out. So the 8 months was hard because that's the first time, I've ever been in that kind of an environment. And the first night you're there, you're hearing 2 guys having sex in the next cell, and so it's very shocking. As you're exposed to people and circumstances that you've never thought you would be in real life. You may see it in a movie, you may read it in a book, but you never actually lived it. You're with people that are really, really the worst of the worst. I'm a father, and I had to be, imprisoned in my cell with a pedophile. And it bothers you. It affects the mind. And then when I was sent to the penitentiary after I got convicted, you're seeing stuff. You're seeing people get stabbed. You're seeing people get raped, and you can't say or do anything about it because the rules are, you keep your mouth shut. You don't say anything. You don't do anything. You can't tell the guards this guy got raped. You can't do anything about it. It affects your mind, and you have to develop coping mechanisms. For the most part, like I said, that I was telling about earlier about how you put things in certain parts in your mind, certain compartments of your mind, and then sort of just leave it there while you sort of live yourself and you live your life, your day-to-day life in the other compartments. And so that's what I had to do. When I had to see this guy got raped by 4 guys, I had to sort of keep that in that small little compartment in the far corner of my mind because there's nothing I could say about it, nothing to do about it. I can't get it out of my head, but I can at least put it there and forget about it and try and live my life day by day with doing everything else. It's very tough. And so I mostly did a lot of meditation. I'm a very religious guy, so I used my Bible. But even then, if I didn't have a Bible, if I had some kind of other reading material that would sort of, strengthen my spirits, or at least take my mind off it. It could be, a book on history because I love history, or comic books or art in general. Then at least I'm able to find some kind of normalcy in my mind to sort of counteract or counterbalance what I saw, with the rape or the stabbing in jail. It was very tough. It was very tough being with people that, you don't normally be around, and people that normally, makes your stomach turn.
Yeah. And you had you mentioned a couple times earlier that when you was trying to test out your penis, but you was in jail with roommates and stuff. So how was being in a jail with two other roommates? Like, what's that experience like? With three guys in one cell? Like, how did
So the jail was overcrowded. It was normally supposed to be two of us in a cell, but it was overcrowded, so there was three of us, and sometimes occasionally four. And so you had two guys sleeping on the floor and then two guys on the bunk bed. And so you had to be creative. Like, okay, when can I sort of tend to my penis and its needs with, three or four other guys, two or three other guys in the cell. And so you sort of, after a while, realize, okay, these two guys always have, visits, on Sunday morning. That's my opportunity to sort of do what I got to do in my cell. So Sunday morning was, take out the penis day and do what you got to do.
Oh, Sunday is masturbation day.
Exactly.
Woo-hoo! Hey, everybody, it's Sunday morning.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm up with the birds.
And if you couldn't do that, then, at the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, as I was always on the upper bunk, you would try and do it sneakily and quietly and do what you had to do.
Yeah, but just other than sneaking a time in to masturbate, just in general, being cooped up in a small cell overcrowded with other people, like that must be stressful to say the least.
Yeah, it was very, I would say it's very inhumane. I mean, the jail that I was in particular was comparable. I mean, when people at the Human Rights Commission heard about the jail that I was in, and they did their research on not only me but other people, they compared it to these prison cells in Iraq. You know how, I don't know if you've seen pictures or heard stories or seen movies, but you would have these cells, jail cells in Iraq, where it's packed with 4, 5, 6 people. It's inhumane. And here we are in North America, and we're supposed to be a humane country with human rights. And, we're not that different. So we shouldn't be really tooting our horn that we're a better country than the rest of the world, when in reality we're not. What goes on in prisons, because it's so disconnected and out of the way from society, it's horrible. They get away with a lot of stuff that, you wouldn't do in real life. But putting 3 or 4 people in one small bedroom with one toilet, a small table for 2, and a bunk bed, and 2 people sleeping on the floor, that's unheard of. That's usually unacceptable in an open society. But if it's behind closed doors and nobody goes in there and sees it, then it's pretty much fair game, right? And so it's a very inhumane. I never got really depressed because I never allowed myself to get depressed. Not being able to see sunlight for 8 months for the most part, and being cooped up in a jail 23 hours a day, with vile people, it gets to you. But again, you have to rely on your strong will, your coping mechanisms, whatever gets you through the day. A lot of guys, they cope. They had to cope in there by smoking contraband weed, or taking other people's prescription narcotics, or growing brew in jail and drinking it to get drunk to get by. But I never did that. I never had to follow that path, because I always used the path of spirituality and religiousness and meditation and that sort of thing. So that's how I coped, because if you don't have a coping mechanism, you're not going to make it. I mean, I've heard stories about guys committing suicide because they couldn't make it. And I remember one time I was so lost in my meditation phase on my top bunk, the guard who came by to do his hourly rounds thought I was going to commit suicide, because I was so sort of lost in my own world and my own thoughts. He thought I was going to commit suicide. He told me, "Don't you dare commit suicide on my watch, because I don't want to deal with the paperwork." A lot of people have committed suicide in jail because of the harsh conditions.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So earlier you was talking about getting out in nature and how getting out in nature helps you. It's a form of meditation. So what are some other tips you can give men for all of these things, for coping in jail, coping with a manhood injury, coping with an abusive relationship? What are some of the tips that you use specifically to get through any of this or all of it?
Well, look, there's some look, when I worked for the public health department, there was always our philosophy was there's 3 or 4 things every person can do to live a healthier lifestyle, and you don't need medication. You don't need medication. You don't need really, anything else that any artificial means to get through any of your health, whether it's mental health or physical health issues. Exercise. The top things we said, if you get in 30 minutes of exercise, whether it's running, swimming, cycling, basketball, dancing, rock climbing, boxing, weight training, martial arts, that does a lot. It does a lot for helping you cope, okay, with whatever trauma you've been through, whatever mental issues you've been through, whatever hardships you're going through in life. And also good for the body because it releases, all these, natural hormones and natural, chemicals that helps you cope mentally, but also keeps your body healthy. And that's what I've done. I used to be a track and field, in a jogger back in high school, but I can't do that anymore because of my injury on my leg. So I do other stuff. I do the swimming. I do like the dancing to a certain extent. And that sort of thing. And even yoga. Even something as simple as yoga. You're moving your arms and your legs, but not necessarily to the point of injuring yourself. And but it does a lot for your body and your mind. Then you have obviously, you gotta eat well. You can't rely on, coping food or junk food like potato chips and beer or whatever. You got to stay away from the carbs. You got to, stay away from the sweets, and sort of stick to the healthier foods. You have healthier options, and then, like I said, so again, in the public health department, we always say exercise, eat right, and stay away from unhealthy lifestyle. So no excessive drinking of alcohol, no street drugs, no smoking tobacco, and then in addition to that, you have to sort of have some kind of social interaction. I know for a long time I kept myself isolated because of lack of trust with society and the way they would perceive me and the stigma of going what I went through. But I realized once I started interacting with other people socially, one-on-one, it helped me cope better. It helped me sort of get back into being a normal, healthier person. And it doesn't have to be a big party. If you can just find 1 or 2 people that you trust and can be with, that helps, and if you have nobody, there's always these help groups, whether you call them on the phone, where you go to a place and they talk about, surviving abuse or, whatever you went through, even with a bunch of strangers in the room that talk about their issues and how they got through it, like, what do they call that? Alcoholic Anonymous, that helps. Isolating yourself is not good for your brain. It doesn't matter how, you're not alone. Believe it or not, you're not alone in what you're going through. Others have gone through a similar sort of situation. And if you can just get it out and talk to people, and now because of, the pandemic, obviously we can't meet in person anymore, but you could always do things over the phone and obviously on the internet. And then the other thing that helps me a lot and helps other people a lot is getting your 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. If you don't sleep, you can't cope for the next day. It's impossible. You can't. So, that's what I use. That's what I do. And of course, I do the meditation, like I said. I do a lot of reading and hobbies and pastimes to sort of, and believe it or not, it helped me to the point where now when I go take out my penis to use the bathroom or whatever, it doesn't trigger the events, of what happened the day I got injured. So it does help.
It used to do, like if you took out your penis before, you would get a flashback, I guess.
Yeah, it was sort of like PTSD, and it always brings you back to June 8, 2008. And whereas now it doesn't. And again,
that's great. That's great, actually. Yeah.
So and then again, and then the other is your pastime. Reading, listening to music. Every once in a while when I feel myself being down, there's a verse, in a book or a Bible or whatever that I go back to and I want to read it again. There's a line or there's a lyric, there's a certain lyric of a song. So you go and play that song to listen to that one lyric, that part of the lyric that sort of raises your spirit and gives you that motivation to move forward. So that's what I do. And of course, then there's the, if I want to lose myself, then I go into, the binging of shows on Netflix and whatever. So, but, everybody has their own thing. You got to find your passion in life and keep it. and help, and it helps you. As long as it doesn't do any damage to you, mentally or physically, then by all means go for it. Because at this point in the game, you want to survive and move ahead and live your life the best way you can.
Yeah. All right. So you're back on the dating scene because you mentioned that. You mentioned that also the women pretty much know who you are before they date you.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what is this like when you meet somebody, you meet a woman on the dating scene and they pretty much already know who you are? What is their reaction to all of this?
I usually get one of three reactions. One is they're curious. They're so curious to see who's the real Demetrios. Is it this guy that got convicted the first time, or is it really the second one at the second trial? And so they're trying to feel me out. They're trying to see who it is, and they're kind of defensive about it, but they're still curious. And sometimes, after, talking to me or getting out with a couple of drinks or whatever, the supper or dinner, whatever, they quickly sort of learn who I am. And some of them still aren't convinced. And so they either give up or I give up on them. Because if I can't convince you who I really am as a person after, 3 dates, then I'm never going to be able to convince you who I am, The other type of women are the ones that are really, they feel for me because they understand. They're more mature, they're wiser, they're more experienced. They know what I went through, a lot of other guys went through, and they feel for me. They're very compassionate, and to the point where they want to sleep with me on the first date. So yeah, I'm telling you.
Is that a penis curiosity, or where does that come from?
Well, it could be the penis curiosity because they do ask, but there's more of a compassion or more of a, I feel for you. Oh, nobody's shown you any love, and you went through all this stuff, and I want to show you love. That there are others that love you, and they want to give you that, lovey-dovey night or experience. So, and then there's the other ones that have been through it themselves, like a lot of women that are abused, and they like me. They'll tell me, you know what? I like the fact that you've been through it because now you know what I've been through it. And if we end up going together as a couple, then at least I know I can trust you, and then you have some kind of empathy for me because you know what it feels like, and you won't do the same thing that my ex did to me. And so, that's the kind of response I've been getting in general. And so, like I said, for the most part, it's all good. Every once in a while, we have people who still don't want to trust me or believe in me, and I don't really just I don't waste any more of my time, and I'll just move on to the next person.
Yeah. That's really important. So, do you have a steady girlfriend now, or are you just still in the dating scene?
Well, I've got three women that are sort of interested in me. I haven't made a decision yet, but they're all very nice. But they all have their past. Everybody has baggage, and it's just a matter of finding out who am I better, in tune with. And of the three, there's one I'm a lot closer to than the other two. But it doesn't mean anything. I mean, I just need more time to get to know the other two better and then make a decision ultimately. But I do see myself dating one of these three. And if things work out, who knows? Maybe 4 or 5 years from now, we can get married, But I want to take my time. I want to make sure that this is the right person. I don't want to. 2 years is not enough. In my opinion, 2 years is not enough to know somebody. I got married after 2 years of dating someone, and it ended up being a nightmare. So I think more time is needed for me, at least.
All right, so here's one. I know we're running a little short, but I do want to cover this.
Yeah.
What's up with your kids? Where are they? Do you have a relationship with them? What's the kid deal?
So my children were adopted. So they were adopted by strangers, and the adoption was irreversible. But my younger son he becomes an adult after Christmas. And so what I'm hoping to do is reestablish a relationship with him and his sister. And but for the most part, I know that I was told by one of my lawyers, because I'm filing a lawsuit against the social workers who took away my kids, is that my daughter is actually following me on social media. She's using a different, her friend, I get her friend's name or her friend's account, and she's following me on social media. So that means that she has some kind of curiosity about me and who I am and what I'm doing in life. but she still can't come to me until after Christmas to really say, okay, I want to be back with you, Dad, and so does my brother. So at this point in time, I have no relationship with them, but I guess for me, it's very heartwarming to know that my daughter is one of the people on my Facebook pages that I don't know who she is because she's using somebody else's account, but or else use somebody else's name, I guess, in picture. But at least it's very reassuring because it's been 12 years since I've seen them, and I really want I miss them to death, and I want to get back in their lives. I missed out on their childhood, but I'm hoping that from now on I'm still part of their lives, during their adult life. So that's basically what's happening with my children.
Wow. All right. Well, that's serious. So now I know that you're a little older than I am. Have you thought about having any more children? Ugh means no.
Not really. I mean,
right.
I'm 50 now, and I'm going to be 51 in December, and I think I'm a bit too old for that. But I have no problems being a stepdad if I need to be, or I don't mind adopting children, But having more biological children, I think, is really out of the question at this point. Yeah. But I still have that urge to be a father and to raise a kid or be there for a child, whether or not it's mine or not biologically. That's a different story.
Yeah. All right. Well, where can people find out? I know you have a book coming out later on this year from the date of this recording.
Yep.
I know you got a movie coming out as you mentioned. So, what's the update on that? When is it coming out? And do you still have any material people can check out on the website or whatever?
Well, I just, because of the pandemic and everything got delayed a bit, but we're looking at October 27th for the release of the English version of the book. It's coming out actually in several languages, including Spanish and French. So the English version comes out on October 27th. You'll be able to find it on Amazon and some of the other websites.
What's the name of the book?
Books. It's called The Ottawa Way. So Ottawa is the capital of Canada, because that's where my tragedy occurred, was when I was working there for the federal government up there in Ottawa. And it's called a viral outbreak in Canada's capital. So when it's viral, meaning not because it's a virus like we're having now in the world, but more like the contagious mindset that gets transmitted from one person to the next. So it's called The Ottawa Way, Viral Outbreak in Canada's Capital, and that comes on October 27th. Like we said, there is a movie coming out. I just saw the screenplay, and we're just tweaking it up, and it's pretty good. I'm happy with it. So it focuses mostly on a man trying to reconnect with his kids after he's been wrongfully convicted. So that should be coming out. We're hoping the summer of 2022. We're getting a lot of people interested in funding the movie, so that's really good. That's really good news. Other than that, the best way to get a hold of me and know anything what's going on about me is my social media pages. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you just type in Jim or Jimmy Angelis, Angelis, you'll find me there. And I'm open. I'll accept anyone who wants to be my friend. Anybody who wants to be a follower. And if you have any questions and you want to send me any information through Messenger, direct Messenger, I'll reply to you. I've been doing that for the past 2 years now, and I don't mind it. And people have been asking for advice, dating advice or advice about being abused, or even advice on your rights as a tenant, because I have rental properties. So. Or even flipping houses. So, but look, I'm easily accessible. I won't turn anybody away. Go to my social media pages. I always keep everybody up to date. I'll even post, like I said, all my other interviews that I've done online, so you can hear those as well. And that's how the best way to get a hold of me. Until the book gets released in October, there's no web page available directly for the book. But in October 27th, I'll put a link on my social media pages so they can go there and find more about the book.
Well, thank you for coming on the program again and being so open and honest and real about all these issues. These are really, really tough issues, And I'm like, whoa, this is heavy duty stuff. So I appreciate you allowing everyone to see your personal life and really talk about how you've coped with it. If you'd like to be a guest on the Core Confidence Life podcast, just fill out our application by going to coreconfidencelife.com/guest. That's coreconfidencelife.com/guest. We appreciate you and all your feedback. So to give us comments about the podcast or anything else, just send a message to Dennis at coreconfidencelife.com. That's Dennis at coreconfidencelife.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all the social media outlets, of course, at Core Confidence Life. I'm your host, Dennis, from New York City, giving you higher consciousness, lower stress, hard-hitting manhood issues with just a side of cornball humor.